Hi again. My name is Robert Thomas DeVincentis, and I am the author of the Book of Kings. This book deals with the history of Western civilization. It also deals with the history of science, nature, man, and God from its historical origins on those four subjects. This book, inside of it, deals with something called aftermath science. And I'll be explaining what that is to you and what are the benefits of the knowledge of aftermath science. I'm also the author of Aftermath Science. And this is probably the final science that you may find on the face of the earth concerning all the different things that are going around today. I said I'm not a theologian, and the Catholic Church hasn't commissioned me to say anything on their behalf. But the things that I talk about today are in direct relationship to things that Christians believe, and I am a Roman Catholic. But when you look at the book, you'll see that it says America's Aftermath Science and Historical Formation, In God We Trust. So this book basically has several titles. It's also known as The Circle of the Earth, and also Science, Nature, Man, and God. And also it talks about aftermath science. And in my last dissertation and review, we talked about the Earth being the center of God's timepiece and the oldest object in the entire universe. It was created first. There's a chronological order, and when I talked about the timepiece, that everything on Earth, as it evolves around the sun and has its different stages of the seasons, show the times and the seasons from all the way from the beginning to the end. And light marks the time on the Earth. That's correct. Light is part of the timepiece of what God has created. So that light, if you lived in a cave or something, you would lose your faculties, and you wouldn't know what time it was or anything else. But light shows us that, and also the constancy of the planets that God put in order. So today we have scientists that are way out off the reservation, so to speak, of what is true. And right, to make reference to the American Indians, listen, the American Indians are the ones that were here, and then as the pioneers were rediscovering the earth again after the main flood, the American Indians were already here. They were already here for about 9,000 years. And how did they disperse? And again, this book deals with all this information. But the American Indians had the Holy Spirit, and I said the relationship of nature, and that you can find God in nature. So a lot of times they'll have names. The first thing they see, I suppose, when they're born, and they take on these different names, running bear or whatever. They're all beautiful things and customs that our American Indians here in the United States have. So God bless them in their endeavors. So what about this? What about the time and the light? Okay, so light's striking the earth, and it's giving you the day, the sun, and everything evolving around. So those are the days. That's it. And you find out how many years and so forth, and everything's calculated on. Even these scientists that are great, they're talking about billions of light years and things like that. And we also showed, again, in review, that it didn't take billions of years for light to get here. I'm sorry, it didn't. It just doesn't make sense at all. And again, the science that we have is a gift from God. However, science and what's happened today is they're making science their God. which is wrong. If you want to call it a heresy, it certainly is. And this is what's happening. So a lot of people are being taken down the primrose path to believe in things that are just absolutely absurd. And science today, even though modern science is great and has a lot of technologies and things in it, it's losing its credibility. All the stuff that's coming up now, if you watch things on the internet and at different programs and stuff, you're going to see a lot of stuff that's just so wild and crazy, and accusations. And again, this thing about life outside of this planet. Okay, so what was God's main focus when he was creating the heavens and the earth? He had an outward view too, but that outward view, there's something else that's quite telling. You know, if you ask yourself which is greater, and again, these are things that are especially to me, the things that I talk about, because they have to do with aftermath science. Which is greater, the physical laws or the written law, like the Ten Commandments and those kinds of things? Actually, when you come right down to it, the written law and God, who actually came in the person of his Son, Jesus Christ, the Word of God, the part of the Holy Trinity, the Son of God, shows up here under the law. So when God created the heavens and the earth, he was, he wouldn't give us a bunch of laws that we couldn't live under. And when he made the Ten Commandments and those other laws and things that he wanted men to follow, especially during Judaism, those were the things that were supposed to be. However, even in Judaism, they were taken to the extent that it made a lot of things that God had said in his laws null and void. In other words, man-made laws were actually taking over God's own laws. So God was subject to his own laws, and yes, the written laws more powerful than the physical laws, because what happens is when you break the written law, the physical laws come apart at the seams, and that's what happened after the flood. The world travailed in pain from the time that Adam and Eve fell, and then after the flood, the world changed again. You know, you're finding trees and forests and things under the Antarctic and, places where it was all frozen and, poles and all that. However, it changed. The earth did change. And this whole idea now, we're going to discuss about global warming too. There's 4 seasons, and even in the Bible it says that a person he compares it to a person that's kind of evil. He doesn't experience the 4 seasons. So there are 4 seasons here, and they do change. And I explained that the Ice Age never did happen in the way that it was explained by modern science, because of the seasons and the way the sun goes around, the earth goes around the sun, and the seasons and the way it turns on its axis. So there was never time to have miles and miles high of ice moving and all this kind of things. It's an erroneous conclusion. After the flood, the 2 poles, the Arctic poles, those became the ice caps of the world, whereas previously the earth was probably in some kind of domed situation where the waters and those kinds of things were more of a tropical thing across the whole world, because man in his infancy, Adam and Eve, and before they got tossed out of the Garden of Eden, I mean, they didn't really even have clothes to wear. There was no embarrassment there. But I mean, at that particular time, before the fall of man. So after the flood, there was some major changes that have taken place on the earth. And we were talking about time and how light from the planets and everything, and the moon and the stars tell us the times and the seasons of the earth. These things are lost to the degree that science is trying to claim that there's things that grow on other planets. So why isn't that true? I mean, how did I come to that conclusion? Jesus Christ, the Son of God, and before he shows up, this is the glory of God was with the Jews, with the tent and the ark and all these kinds of things. And it says that God preferred his dwelling place here. So out of all the heavens in that, Jerusalem eventually is the place where God is claiming that this is his place, this is his home, and this new Jerusalem at the end of the world will come down from heaven. So this all has to do with Earth. So there is no other planets that have the same reference points that you're going to find with Christ. That's right. You're not gonna find that anywhere else in the universe. And I said that the things that were created by God were done here on the earth, not out there. So God doesn't want to take your attention and make you believe that all of a sudden there's other supreme beings and things like this that are out there. No, I already went through all that. That if the God-man Jesus Christ is really, and he is truly the second person of the Trinity, you're not going to get anything better than that. That's even greater than the angels, according to the book of Hebrews and those things. You're going to see that God says, let all the angels adore and worship him. So that's where we're at. So why is Christ the preeminent of all things, who made everything? You're not going to find this in any science textbook. And I said that all this other stuff that you're seeing right now, it might have a place in time and space for our history of that. But at some point in time, it's all going to collapse. All these theories and everything else. They're finding out as they probe into outer space that because of all the different things that are out there, it's going to be very difficult to even try to live out there. And I explained earlier that man's place is Earth, not somewhere else. He's not going to I mean, if he did, it would be very limited. Just like he could live in the bottom of the ocean, that's going to be limited to some degree. But the limitations that God had given the earth to man. He didn't give Mars to him to live there. Anything that man takes into outer space is something that has to come from Earth. His spaceship's made out of things of Earth. The air that he's breathed is, being duplicated or made from the things, the technology and that to be able to breathe. And he's always one breath from death. That's how fragile the world is. Same thing with the ocean. Man is always one breath from death because it wasn't made for us to live there. So at any rate, what you have now is a lot of confusion. Man being in with the animal kingdom and all this kind of stuff, and things turning into this and that, and the craziness of the world and what they're teaching. So anyway, with this aftermath science, you're going to find out things that are contradictory to the things that are being taught. They said that diamonds are made from carbon, coal, under pressure. Well, okay, that might be true. You could probably manufacture something like that. However, in a laboratory, if you look at any coal mine, there's no diamonds being found in a coal mine. Why would that happen? There's plenty of pressure there, but there's no diamonds. That's because diamonds are not in a coal mine. They're not made under pressure there. In fact, what I heard is the largest diamond that was ever found was found on top of a hill. So there's no pressure there, is there? So these are things that you're taught. You're also taught about fossil fuels. What do you mean fossil fuels? Okay, so all this oil and coal or whatever you have is, things do break down and they turn into things that are broken down. But this whole idea, and this was in the books and the science of all kinds of animals piling up on each other, and well, the chemical breakdown of all that wouldn't equal coal or oil or anything like that. So we got some confusion in science as they were coming along trying to discover things. So what about the earth? Man had the oil from the whales, the blubber, and made oil, and so he had a light at night. I mean, this is in the infancy again. Then they discovered oil in the earth, and they're going to make fuel out of it. So that changed everything. So what about the earth? Didn't God design man to have the freedoms? I mean, he has to take care of the earth and be a good steward, but not to the degree that it's to the detriment of himself. I mean, if everybody burned leaves on a given day, the whole town would be full of smoke if he lived there. But the same thing where we have to be careful that we don't overpollute the air that we breathe and things like that. But the idea of fossil fuels and that it's not a God-given thing is absolutely erroneous. This world would not be able to exist without fossil fuels. The marketplaces, the ocean liners that go everywhere and deliver trucks and trains and all that stuff. Come on. So these are things that God knew and he ordained that man can have control over, and at the same time he's given man the ability to make sure that he's not polluting the water, not polluting the air, so that it's the endangerment of people. But as I expressed earlier, sometimes the natural environment of forest fires and things like that add more to the pollution than man could probably ever do with his cars and everything. So this is a bunch of baloney with that. So we're talking about global warming, okay, and there's all kinds of information. You could fill libraries full of it, but it doesn't make sense in the long run because I don't believe in my own heart of hearts that the planet is going to go through another ice age as they're claiming and all that. I mean, I'm in my 70s. I can't even remember when there wasn't a time when there wasn't a winter, summer, fall, spring. They follow each other, even the plants and the animals. So what about this evolution? Okay, so what is aftermath science? Aftermath science basically is that God created the world out of nothing, and that science is a gift from God about the things concerning the things that he made. However, it's not the end of all things because it's not a complete toolbox that you have. There's all kinds of things that are missing from that. And all those things always point to God. So this predisposition of the animal kingdom and everything else, and the trees and the forests and the different things, they bring about the same things over and over. So there's a predisposition of in the animal kingdom, like with turtles and ducks, these kinds of things. They come out from their birth with the abilities already to navigate the sea and sea turtles and things like that. I mean, come on. These are things that are built into them. That's a predisposition. Nature, remember I told you I'm the historian of the origins of nature. No. The nature is that man and woman did not come from the birth of a man or a woman. They came from the direct creation by God and the miraculous. Man being taken from the earth, the clay, and the woman being taken out of man. And then from then, the predisposition. This follows for all living things. They are already made with the seed that is going to reproduce with God's blessing to be fruitful and multiply. So if you're being taken down the primrose path, there might be anything you can do about it. You go to college, what you can do? Fight with the teacher, try to tell them, oh, well, I heard this from this historian here. Well, okay. But what happened was the courts took away your privileges, your freedom that you think you have a speech, and all these kinds of things. You're not going to find it in the secular world. It's not going to be there. You might go to private colleges or schools. There you might get some of this. But other than that, you're going to be running into a problem. So you have two dual competing things for your mind, and it's a good thing to have a little bit of both. There's so much more we could talk about, and that is, was there really continental drift? Was really the whole world one big chunk of land, and all of a sudden it split up? Well, there are plates that move. There are volcanoes and earthquakes and things of that nature, but they don't go to the degree of what we call continental drifting, because first of all, the world isn't that old. But what happened is that the levels of the sea changed after the flood, and the waters that receded to different levels and things like that. So all these coastal regions and things like that are, there has to be a chronological order after God has created something. But what's happening in the modern science is they're not taking into account some of the things that God had talked about during his creation, and they're not taking into account the different disasters that had already visited the earth when God had destroyed man, except for those people that were in the ark and the animals that were with them. So at any rate, this is a lot to digest, because it's very foreign and different if you're not a person that's interested in the biblical, not Judeo-Christian, let's call it that, because it comes from Judaism and then reconfirmed again by Christ, the commandments and everything, when he shows up here as a man. So everything corresponds and relates to the final, who is Jesus Christ, our Savior and of the world, who was rejected, and then this goes on to the day to today. But there's a lot of Christians. I'm not the only one around that believes that, and certainly. So what am I trying to impart to you? A certain peace. Then when you go outside and you see the beautiful sun in the sky and you're having a beautiful day, it's that, remember that God created the world good. He said it was very good. And that's where you have to be. You got to wear the proper clothing and do things today, as you always have. As far as I can remember, you have to take care of yourself in the different seasons that we have, or you could end up in trouble. And that's the way it's always been on earth. There's nothing new here. God's in charge of the weather, and we'll be talking about next time why that's God's storehouse, and he can bring about certain things on the earth if he wants to help people, help farmers, and also to bring a lot of pain and suffering so that people turn to him. And that's what happens sometimes. Sometimes we have to get that pain and suffering to realize that we're off course. And that's a good thing. So, whatever God decides in your life, I hope it's for your betterment. And I hope you have a great evening. And thanks again for listening to me.